Thank you, Eileen, and to Mary for setting the stage for an insightful final day of Inspire Fest 2020. And welcome to everyone who's with us today. We are beyond grateful that you showed up on your Saturday morning to learn, share, and grow with us. You are the driving force behind our mission and the engineers of entrepreneurial skill sets. Thank you for being here. So far, we have learned how to build more inclusive and creative classrooms, the importance of identity and personal agency in entrepreneurial pursuits, how to use empathic communication to collaborate with and inspire others, and why it's more critical than ever before to instill entrepreneurial skills in our youth. If there's one thing 2020 has taught us, it's that the future is uncertain. Our youth are going to face challenges we haven't even considered. They're going to have to adapt more rapidly, forge uncharted paths, and build cooperative networks. And no one knows how to do that better than our next speaker, Ashlee Ammons. Ashlee is a Cleveland girl who grew up in Lorraine before attending Baldwin Wallace University, where she became the first intern for LeBron James. The connections made during that internship opened doors to New York City, where Ashlee rose from executive assistant to director of events, producing events for A-listers like Oprah Winfrey, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Jay-Z, all by age 26. When Ashlee started in tech, she was known as a quad outsider, which is a Black, female, non-technical tech founder. Today, she is Ashlee Ammons, the 38th Black female tech founder to raise $1 million in funding, president at Mixtroz, inclusion activist, and powerful woman, according to Entrepreneur magazine. Now making her home in Birmingham, Alabama, Ashlee serves on the executive board of Tech Birmingham and is an advisor to the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. Ashlee is a Birmingham Business Journal 40 Under 40 recipient, as well as Birmingham 40 Under 40 of the Decade, and Business Journal's National Rising Star. In November, Ashlee was selected as one of the 100 Black female entrepreneurs and innovators to be presented with funding as part of the 100 Days of Resources by American Express and I Fund Women of Color. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to this inspirational powerhouse. Ashlee Ammons, over to you.
Good morning. Oh,
I am Ashlee. I see so many familiar faces, and that's amazing. Many of you know, but if you don't, I am an extrovert. I love meeting new people. I love interesting conversation. Yet for some reason, when I go to networking events, it leaves me feeling kind of like this. Have you been here? Are you here right now? Do you feel this way?
I am Ashlee Ammons. I am the co-founder and daughter of the Mixtroz team.
And I am Carrie Schrader. I'm the co-founder and her mother.
I've partnered with my mom, Carrie Schrader, a former... Oh my God. Carrie's also my stage mom, so here she is.
I'm going to talk a little bit about how we built this and how this experience, what you've experienced today, will allow you to build, create, be in the know of technology.
So face-to-face is everything. Your phone is great, all of this technology is awesome, but there is not going to be a technology in our lifetime that replaces face-to-face connectivity. Remember that. Talk to everyone. Give everyone a chance, because you never know.
Get in the middle here.
This to me really is about the future of America.
Not only do we want you, but we support you 100%. This is the feeling I get when I'm in my new home of Birmingham, Alabama. To them, I was never some Black chick with a tech startup. I was an entrepreneur with a business that was growing, and they got behind me and supported it. As two Black female non-technical tech co-founders, which is a mouthful, it has been amazing the reception that we've gotten. People really get what Mixtroz is trying to do and the company that we have the potential to build right here in the Southeast.
man, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I was going to say, I've seen that thing 1,000,000 times. I edited it, but like every time it kind of gets me ready for the day. So I want to say good morning to those of you who are letting me see your face. Thank you, because that lets me know that you are tracking with me, and I can see the nods and I can see good smiles. And sometimes I can see you go, "Ugh, did that actually happen?" So I welcome that. But guess what? I am not here to shame those of you who have your camera off. You know why? It's Saturday morning and I saw what it's looking like in Cleveland. You guys, it's a lot of snow. it dropped to 40 degrees here and I had to pull out a parka and Ugg boots. I was like, we live in Birmingham. It's not even supposed to do that down here. So good morning to everybody. I'm going to share my presentation with y'all, but I just wanted to go through a couple housekeeping things. Number one, I would need to thank YEI, the team. First of all, I wanted to tell y'all, I would have worn yellow. Just so you know, I would have worn yellow, but that's okay. That's okay. I wanted to thank the YEI team because I have to let you know, this event has pivoted and taken different curves and things, and the intention behind getting me here, somebody who is from Cleveland, somebody who is an entrepreneur of color, somebody who is a female entrepreneur, there was serious intention behind it, and they've been working with me on this since like February. And we have been in touch since February through all the curves and twists and pivots. And so I wanted to say, I didn't come here by accident. YEI got me here, and it's because they have intention behind the things that they are doing. So I just wanted to give them a shout out for that. The other thing I want to tell you is, ask me anything. Like when we get to the end of this presentation, don't feel the need to be formal. Ask me anything that you want to ask me that you think would be beneficial to your students. Trust and believe, I have heard it all. I've had all the questions. So please ask me anything because I would love to give you a nugget that you can pass on to your students to help them get where they're going. I feel like that's so important. The purpose of my presentation this morning is to talk to you guys about how my mom and I did this crazy thing that we didn't even know that we were setting ourselves up for. I want to explain to you kind of what's going on in the world and then what we did in our business to get it to where we are today. So I'm looking so forward to doing that with you this morning. I will say, I do wish that I was actually in Cleveland. I was looking forward to coming home. I was going to swing through Baldwin Wallace and see my sorority sisters and whatnot, but we all have 2021. So it's all good. It's all good. So let me just share my screen with you here and we will go ahead and get started. So the name of the game is resilience. I've heard this word said a couple times already this morning. And so the first thing that I like to do before we start talking about a topic is let's define what that actually means. So resilience is defined as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. I would say if you are sitting here on the morning of December 5th of 2020, the year of the great pandemics, the year when everything changed, no matter where you were in the world, I would say by definition, you are indeed resilient because we have all had to do things this year that maybe we never thought we'd have to do. We have all had to embrace discomfort, which is really hard for us as humans to do. We really like to stay comfortable, but we recognize embracing discomfort this year was the only way that we were going to move forward to next year. Does everybody remember when this was the worst thing that we thought would happen in 2020? I do. I was sitting at the gym and I started getting text messages and tweets. You guys heard my first internship was with LeBron. So I had come across Kobe's path a couple times in my life. And this was such a huge moment. And I was just like, wow, how are we going to recover from here? With profound sadness, this moment happened. But then all of this happened and we all had to experience this ourselves in different ways. And to be honest, the majority of this was scary, horrifying, stress inducing, all those sorts of things. But finally, we are rounding a corner so that we can see what our new beginning is going to look like in this new reality that we're living in today. You guys are a testament to the new reality because who thought that on a Saturday, you all would get up and get on a Zoom so that you could hear a keynote speaker talk about something from a distance? But that is the reality that we're in. And because you showed up, we're all embracing that reality. And it makes me believe that we're all ready to move forward. So in my opinion, 2020 has been a year of two great pandemics. So of course, there's been the health scare, which is COVID. COVID is intense and it is scary. I had to get a COVID test the other day, y'all. I am negative, just so everybody knows. And I want to say on this call, it wasn't that bad. It was uncomfortable, but it wasn't that bad. So if you need to go get one, it's fine. But COVID, one pandemic, but then the other pandemic that we're going through, all of us, is this pandemic around Black Lives Matter and what is going on in this country with people of color. And so, specific to me, I have felt those two pandemics very deeply this year. And at times, it's been hard to try to figure out which one was more important for me to be paying attention to at the time, because both of them are talking about my life, how my life will be going forward, and how I'll be able to live my life. So these two things have been dominant. And I think for everybody on this call, on our minds as we look forward to 2021 and beyond, and how we're going to change from here. So, to make my story make sense, I want to give you guys a little bit of context on who I am. So, you saw that speaker reel. I'm a big my biggest thing about speaker reels or Instagram or Snapchat, those are all the highlights. All those moments are so nice. It has nice video production quality. Makeup was done on those days. I wasn't like crying in a closet somewhere, which I do sometimes, just so you know. And so I want to give you guys a little bit of context to what is going on behind the scenes that made me even able to take this entrepreneurial journey. So let's start over here on the left. That is a picture of my family. That is my mom, myself, my brother when he was in the military. That child does not belong to us. He's our god brother, but he's in the picture too. This is my stepsister and my stepfather. So this is the family that I grew up with when I lived in Lorain/Elyria, Ohio. Fun fact is, for whatever reason, we always line up in ombre order for these family photos. No idea why, but it's something that happens naturally and it works for us. My stepfather came into my life when I was about 6 years old. So he has been in the game with me for a long time. So the only reality that I know is really a colorful one. So my whole life, I have had all these different colors and cultures coming together. We certainly had growing pains as a family in the early 90s, but we figured it out. And I feel like my life perspective has benefited greatly from just being thrown into that at such a young age. It has enabled me to not be scared when I walk into a room where every single person in there is different from me. I actually feel a sense of comfort in diversity. And I think that that's something important for our students, because we can just all tend to cluster with people who are just like us. And it is really that willingness to break out of that which will open doors. So a couple things about my family. My stepfather worked at Ford. My mom worked at Ford, and that's how they met one another. My stepfather, though, he retired when I was in high school. So I graduated from high school in 2005. In 2002, my stepfather retired. So he was my stay-at-home parent, and my mom was the working parent. So I've always had a shifted perspective on how a household is run, should run. Mother at the top of the household, running things at work, and then having my dad at home to take care of all the soft skill things. So that's also a big reason why I have the life perspective that I do today. So again, I feel like we've heard a lot over the course of these months about white privilege. People throw that around all the time. White privilege, this, that, and the third. I want to talk to you about Black privilege, because Black privilege is something that I recognize that I have benefited from. The fact that I have a mom who was able to have a good full-time job, was able to then go to Kent State University and get her master's degree. After achieving her master's degree, she got a 60% pay increase and sent our family into the stratosphere on what was possible, how we were living, what our lifestyle was like, while I still had a stay-at-home dad. That those things are privileged, and I recognize that. Also, because of that, my parents were able to send me to Baldwin Wallace. If y'all are from Ohio, y'all know this is a pretty nice school. Tuition is not cheap at Baldwin Wallace, but my parents paid for it in full, which means I graduated from BW with a great education and no student loans, which means I had flexibility after college to do whatever I wanted. So that's my childhood. If we go over to education, I put this stat here because I like to be data driven. Only 25% of Black women have 4-year college degrees. 25%. Not only was I able to get a 4-year college degree from a private liberal arts institution, I then was able to land this crazy internship of a lifetime. And just to give you guys a little bit of background on how that happened, because I would like you to pass this in particular on to your students. The way the LeBron internship happened is pretty straightforward. I was going into my junior year of school, and I was paired up with a classmate of mine to work on Dance Marathon, which supports pediatric AIDS. So this classmate of mine, he and I looked nothing like each other, but I try to tell students when I get in front of them, I'm like, y'all, this was 2007. There was no iPhone. Those came in 2009. There was no Snapchat. Facebook was only available on a desktop, and you had to be an EDU email address to get Facebook. There was no Twitter. There was no Instagram. There was nothing to take your attention away from the fact that you had been paired up with another human and you were going to have to figure out how to have a conversation with them. So this student's name is Brendan, and still to this day, I'm like, Brendan and I had a conversation. We looked nothing alike, but we realized that we actually had a lot of commonality because of that conversation, which maybe lasted 40 minutes while we were working on this project. He simply said to me, Ashlee, I know a woman and she's looking for interns. I think you would be great. He sent an email. 3 weeks later, I became LeBron James' intern. That's the story. So my point there is passing on to your students that agnostic of what people look like, what their outward experience is, we call this our earth suit. Whatever our earth suit looks like, it doesn't matter. You should have the willingness and be open to talk to anyone who comes into your space. Reason for that is you don't know if that's going to be the one that opens the door that can literally change your life. So I was with LeBron and his team in Cleveland for 2.5 years. That's a long time to be an intern for LeBron. That's a long time to be getting experience and absorbing knowledge from this behemoth of a person, behemoth of a brand in his hometown at a time where LeBron was starting to peak. So at this point, I realized, I was like, I don't think I want to be in Cleveland anymore. I was like, I think I'm going to go to New York City, which was a very interesting thing for me to say because no one in my family had ever done that. Everyone in my immediate family stayed within like the Lorain, Elyria area. When my parents moved from Lorain to Elyria, my grandma was like, how are we going to get there? And those two things are like 15 or 20 minutes away from one another. So like it was a big deal when I said that I want to go to New York. And so through networking, through LeBron, that's how I got to New York. I let them know that I was ready to go, and they started making connections for me. I went on 3 interviews in New York, and third time's a charm. So that's just another testament to the fact that everything doesn't work out when you want to go and try to do it. Sometimes it takes time. Life is a long game, and so I went on 3 interviews. The first 2 were no's, and then the third one happened to be a yes. But the yes allowed me to become the executive assistant to a gentleman named Noah Tepperberg. Noah Tepperberg in New York, he owns a ton of nightlife and hospitality properties. Again, coming from Cleveland, I didn't really know what that was. I just told that man, if you give me this job, I will come and I will hustle for you. And whatever I said convinced him of such. He gave me the job. I started off as his executive assistant, and I worked my way up by hustling to director of events at this luxury hospitality company. So to give you an idea of the scale, at age 25-ish, I did my first solo produced event. So we call this like solo surgery in the events industry. So this is the first event that like I was at the helm of. Do you know what it was? It was the 2012 London Olympics. It was the 2 after parties at the 2012 London Olympics, which was extraordinary because the second after party, it was when Team USA basketball won their gold medals. And so I have these lovely photos of LeBron and Kobe and Carmelo wrapped in American flags, and they had on gold Beats headphones. And that was all stuff that came out of my head that I got to put into practice at such a young age. It was really all about the hustle. Another thing that I like to tell students is the way that I was able to move so fast in my career is because I approached anything like it was everything. And what I mean by that is whether they were telling me to do something cool like the London Olympics, I went hard at it. If they were telling me to go pick up mail, I went hard at it and I did it to the best of my ability. I had no distinction between what the task was. I did every task to the best of my ability. And over time, people took note, and that's how I was able to grow. I never felt like there was anything that was beneath me. If it was asked of me, I figured it out. And so then we point out here, my last point of privilege is that single Black women which I am, have a median of wealth of less than $100. And then I talk about the privilege that I've had. By the time that photo with Oprah was taken, I was making north of $100,000 as a single woman living in New York. I was very comfortable. There was no need for me to become an entrepreneur, but I embraced becoming uncomfortable to make this journey happen. So let's get into that. But first, before I even do that, I just showed you all of this, and all of this is great. It seems like the story starts with my mom, but it doesn't. For me to become an entrepreneur, this is actually the first step of things that had to happen. And as you can tell by this photo, it happened a while ago. So, what we're looking at right now, this is actually the plantation house that my family comes from. It is in Alabama, less than 2 hours from where I currently sit this morning. This is called Barton House. My family lived here. And so I bring this up to say my grandparents, my great grandparents, at a certain point, they had to get out of here. They recognized that they had to get out of Alabama because Alabama was behind where the North was with the way that they were dealing with people of color. So my family migrated to Detroit and Cleveland. They got up there. They were able to secure good jobs in the steel industry, in the manufacturing industry. And because of that, my grandfather was able to pay cash to send my mom and her three other siblings to college so that they could get good educations and become professionals, which is what they've done today. So really, the story for Ashlee becoming an entrepreneur in 2020, it had to get started a real long time ago so that my grandparents could set my mom up for a layup and my mom could set me up for a layup. That's the perspective on how long this has had to be to get to where I am today. So now let's get into the startup portion of this. So Ashlee's got a company. Ashlee's got a company called Mixtroz. So this is theoretically what it should look like when you start a company. You see how nice and linear this is? It looks so clean. It's like this whole thing is less than 3 years. Well, I'll tell you right now, we came up with the idea for Mixtroz at the end of 2014, and it's 2020, and I'm not done with this little map here yet. And I'm going to explain the different steps that we had to take to get to where we're going. Yes, our process has been longer, but it doesn't mean at some point we can't catch up because of the work that we're doing today. So my biggest thing is I dissent on the slide that we just saw. I dissent on the slide that we just saw. And the reason that I'm dissenting is because part of the work that I'm doing today is for the people that are your students. My goal, part of it is, of course, I want to build a successful business, but part of it is I also want to make this journey easier for colorful people who are coming behind me. And the only way that I can do that is through action. When I'm met with a brick wall, I generally come with a jackhammer because I don't have time. So that is what I'm trying to do for today. So while the world may say, this is what this journey should look like, the world may say, startups get built by students in dorm rooms, and in 6 months, they're able to raise billions of dollars, and then their companies take over the world. That's not everybody's startup journey. And so that's why this morning, I want to share with you some details on mine and what it actually looks like. So this is a bit more accurate. So we saw that nice linear graph, and now this is a bit more accurate. So let me explain to you how this journey actually came to be. So in 2014, my mom and we were both working in our careers, both quite successful in our careers. I've told you a bit about mine, but on my mom's side of things, she was an HR executive. The company that she worked for had just IPO'd, so she was able to cash out and take a bit of a sabbatical. This was the first time that she was able to take a breather, we'll call it, in her professional career. She had every intention of going back to work, but for the time being, she decided to focus on my brother, who is a little crazy, and she wanted to make sure that he had a good high school experience, and my brother got more I would say attention and support than he ever thought he might. So that's what was going on at this time. So I went to a conference in 2014, a live conference. Obviously, we were all meeting in person then. And my whole purpose for going to the conference was I realized I had a lot of contacts in the nightlife and hospitality industry. I realized that I had a lot of contacts in the liquor and spirits industry, that sort of thing, because that's where the base of my network was. But I wanted to make more connections in beauty and fashion and editorial and that sort of thing. So I paid money and I went to a conference to get that done. When it came time to network, the event organizer said, go up to someone with the same colored dot on their name tag as you. And this is where the moment where we saw a problem. I saw a problem. So number one, y'all. So if we have, let me get it. If we have a post-it like this. This is the name tag. Women wear their name tag right here, which is on an uncomfortable area to wear a name tag, I'll be honest. And then if you have to go find a dot that's the size of like a Sharpie point on someone, it's very awkward because you have to go up to them and say, I'm yellow, you're yellow. Let's talk about that. That is a very awkward way to go about starting a new relationship with someone. And on the same weekend, serendipitously, my mom had an event with her friends that she had planned. And so she experienced the same thing, but in a different way. That evening, my mom and I got on the phone and we were like, that's crazy. We're both pretty extroverted. We both love meeting people, but we both had an issue connecting with the right people when we were somewhere. And out of curiosity, we just said, what is the tool that solves that? So we got on the Google, that's what my mom calls it for whatever reason. And we tried to Google search together and figure out what was the tool that solved the problem that we were talking about. But after some exhaustive research, because at this point we just wanted to know, we realized that there wasn't a tool that was solving the problem the way that we were thinking about. And so literally all in one night, we started to map out what that tool would look like. And over the course of the next week and change, that tool became Mixtroz. So Mixtroz stands for the word mixer and introduction smushed together. That's where the name comes from. I literally dreamed about it. And today what our software is it is a tool that increases peer-to-peer engagement and also collects data. So our whole value proposition is around the fact that there is nothing that's going to replace face-to-face communication, whether it's live, virtual, or a hybrid of the two. The way that it gets used is like this. We work with a lot of colleges and universities, for example. Babson College may be one of my favorite examples. Recently, they did an event where they had their scholar students coming in for a WebEx. And these students some of them were near campus, some of them were as far away as China. And so after a keynote, they all got into the software. The student took about 1:15 to get through our software. And what they did during that time is they filled out a quick virtual name tag and they answered a series of questions that Babson had customized in advance. The other thing that Babson is able to do is weight the questions so that it affects the way that their students are matched with one another. So for example, one of those questions was, I am 0 to 50 miles from campus. I am 3,000 plus miles from campus. They weighted that question diverse so that they got students near and far coming together in groupings. And then they were able to do that over a course of 10 questions, which basically allows an organizer to engineer the serendipity they know would be valuable. So when it's time for their students to get into groups, our software says, here's your group. It connects them together in a virtual meeting space. And then once they get there, it gives them access to icebreakers and their group data and a group activity if they would like, so they can easily get the conversation started. So basically what my mom and I did, even though we did not have a tech background, which I think is such a value add for us, is we looked at the networking process from a sociological perspective, and we figured out the areas where friction exists, and we methodically removed those areas from the connection process between humans to create a tool to facilitate those collisions that we know are valuable, and then at the same time collects data. So that's where I'm coming from on what is Mixtroz, how is it built, all of that good stuff. So the next step in my mom and I's journey after the ideation moment was really, okay, great. We've had this great idea. Now what? So we went to the University of Google. People sometimes, I think, make this way too complicated. I look at an entrepreneur like Sarah Blakely, who founded Spanx. Ladies, if I was with you in person, I'd have them on, but I'm at home, so I don't have them on. But Spanx, when Sarah Blakely invented Spanx, it was so long ago, she didn't have the ability to just pick up her smartphone and figure out laws and that sort of thing. She actually had to go to the Georgia Tech Law Library in person, dig through books to figure out what she was looking for. Today, we don't have to do that. Today, we have the world in our pocket and we can find everything that we need to. We just have to be willing to put in the time to go search for it. So when you're starting a business, everything you need to know is on the internet already, because one thing about entrepreneurs is we love to talk about how we did it. So there are entrepreneurs everywhere who have blogged about it, talked about it, YouTubed about it, all that stuff. You just have to be willing to go out there and seek that information and then figure out how to apply it to what you're doing. So my mom and I, that's the route that we went. So for easy things like setting up a business license and whatnot, we just went on Google and we got that done. So we came up with the idea in November of 2014. That December, I came home to Nashville, where my mom was based at the time, for the holidays. I thought that that was going to be a lovely break for me. It was not. My mom and I basically had a 10-day think tank just to think about what we would do with this business when it was moving forward. And what I'll tell you is, I wasn't sold on being an entrepreneur just yet, because why would I be? I was living in New York, was living the dream. I was very comfortable. There's no need for me to become an entrepreneur. But for whatever reason, my mom really saw it. And because she happened to be on that sabbatical, that was part of the reason why she really jumped in with 2 feet and went for it. That's another thing that I would say to tell your students. People often say to me, "Oh my gosh, it's so cute that you started a business with your mom." And I'm like, it's not cute. It was a very intentional business decision. And the reason why is, my mom is, and she's going to be annoyed, but don't tell her I told you this. She's 58. Okay. My mom's 58. And what I'll tell you is, as somebody who is 33, getting myself a founder, a female founder over 40, that's who you want your co-founder to be. The reason for that is, if you are working with a person who had to grow the ranks at the time that they did, they just had to figure it out. There was no me too, us too, Black Lives Matter. There was none of that going on. So anybody who rose the ranks, who are in that almost baby boomer category, that's just a person who gets it done. That's a person who doesn't understand the word no. They always figure out how to get to a yes. So it was a strategic business decision to be a business partner with my mom on this. So tell your students, it doesn't always have to be somebody that looks like them, even from an age perspective, when they're looking for who to do a business like this with. So my mom figures out that there's the Consumer Electronics Show that's coming up in Las Vegas in January of 2015. So at that time, again, I still have a full-time job. And so my mom says, "You know what? I'll just go by myself." She was like, "I want to educate myself on technology. I know nothing about this." So my mom literally got her like cowboy boots and went to Vegas to go to this conference by herself. And I bring this story up to say, at a certain point in that conference, my mom felt like such an outsider, because she was there. She was one of very few people of color, certainly one of few women people of color in her age group, and she just felt so far removed. So at a certain point at one of the events that were going on, she found a table and there were 2 drinks sitting on the table, but she was like, 2015, who would just leave open drinks on a table? That's crazy. And so she's eating her food, and then shortly, 2 Caucasian gentlemen come up to her, and they're about in her age group, and she's like, "Okay, whew, I feel comfortable." So they get to talking after a while, and she asks them, she's like, "Okay, there were so many tables in here. Why did you guys actually pick this table?" And they said, "Those are our drinks. You're actually at our table." Those 2 gentlemen became our app developers, and they are still our dev team today. We met them for the first time in 2015. Over the course of this journey, I have only seen them maybe 5 times in person. The rest of our professional relationship with one another happens over Zoom and Slack and all the other tools that we have at our disposal. So a couple things here. One, serendipity comes into the entrepreneurial journey often. I think when you're supposed to stay on the road for something, you will continue to get signs that you're supposed to be there. And I think that is something that has happened for us constantly over the course of this journey with Mixtroz. So now we're in 2015. I am still living and working in New York. So my mom was doing Mixtroz during the day, and I was doing Mixtroz on nights and weekends. Again, I still wasn't sure that I wanted to be there. But over the course of 2015, in working with our dev team, we started to develop our branding. We also had an MVP. So that's the minimal viable product. And so we had it, and we were like, great, we just need to find somebody who's going to buy this so we know that it will work, and we'll go from there. I fast forward to the end of 2015, and I stop around October. The reason I want to do that is because I want to highlight the fact that just because you decide to become an entrepreneur, that doesn't mean that the rest of your life is going to stop. You still have life responsibilities that are going to come up while you have decided to take this crazy journey. One of ours was October of 2015, my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer. And so that was big, and it hit me like a brick in the chest. What was amazing about this though is my mom was so methodical in the way that she figured that out. She said it was a focus on her faith, her family, and Mixtroz that got her through that. And one thing I like to say is the reason why this isn't a sad story is because my mom went to her annual exam. And so she was able to catch it early at stage 1, and she was able to get it taken care of. So that's something I want to pause and say. Everybody on this call, we have a lot of different things going on. We're being pulled in all the directions. You're trying to serve your students. You're trying to serve your family. You need to serve yourself first. And that means not skipping appointments. That means not putting things off, because if you're not at your best health, you can't do your best work. So I watched my mom go through that process, get surgery, have radiation and all of that. And that was the point as a co-founder in 2016 when I said, I either need to get in this business all the way, or I need to get out of this business all the way. And so I chose to get in. In March of 2016, we did our first paid activation. So we found somebody to give us $250 to use Mixtroz at their event. What was so interesting about this is we go to this event. It was March 5th of 2016. I know that date because it was my stepfather's birthday. And we were like, well, you got to put on a Mixtroz t-shirt. You're about to work this event with us. So we go to this event. It was the first nice Saturday in Nashville in March. And it was at a conference that started at like 8 a.m. on a Saturday, and it was going to end at 5 p.m. We go in there that day and we're like, what time is the networking going to happen? And the host is like, it's going to be the very last thing today. And we're like, oh my gosh, we're like, nobody's going to stay for this. This is going to be terrible, a disaster. But what actually ended up happening is the attendees got in the software, got sorted into their groups by Mixtroz. They stayed in their Mixtroz groups so long that the venue turned off the lights. That was another clear indication that what we had built was working. Our hypotheses were correct. And so again, that was an indicator to move forward. So it was at that point that I sold off my stuff in New York and I moved to Nashville. This is one of those areas of discomfort. I had to go from living by myself in New York City, making north of 6 figures, to moving back to my family home for the first time since I was age 17. I moved into my baby brother's room because he was gone to the military. I got his beat up car. When I got my bags and moved into my brother's room, there was a big LeBron fat head on the wall. And I think I had like a personal mental breakdown crisis situation because I couldn't believe I had done this crazy thing. But for whatever reason, the Mixtroz journey was telling us that that was the next step that had to happen. Another thing that happened to us, you heard Emily say earlier the phrase quad outsider. And so that's so serious. And where that comes from is when we lived in Nashville, that's what people would refer to us as. They were just like, you guys have a great idea, but like all those things, plus you're in the South, this is not going to happen for you two. And we proved to be the little engine that would not die, which I think that was much to people's dismay. But we continued to go through. But one thing that we realized is Nashville kept telling us that. And if you stay around people long enough who are telling you negative things, telling you that you can't, that all brings you down, you yourself are going to start to internalize and believe that. So where possible, one of the best things to do is if you're in an ecosystem, and I mean this for work, play, and otherwise, if you are in an ecosystem that is telling you that you're crazy, it can't be done, and you don't agree with the reasons how they're justifying that, remove yourself from that ecosystem. Go somewhere else, because that is the best way, the easiest way to kill your spirit when it doesn't necessarily need to be dead yet. So what we did is we realized Chattanooga, Tennessee, which was not that far from Nashville, 2 hours on the dot, it was actually the number one place for a woman to start a business at that time. So we ended up applying to a program in Chattanooga that moved my mom and I to Chattanooga for the summer of 2016, where we lived in a dorm room together, y'all. We had a suite mate also. It was awful. But we saw the vision. We were like, we have to make it through this season. So we went through that accelerator. We got some additional polish on ourselves in the way that we were talking about our business. We generated some additional revenue. And then we knew that we should, again, stay on the course. So now, let me fast forward us up to 2017. So May of 2017. So now we've been in this for a while. And keep in mind, at this point, my mom and I have not collected a salary now in like a year, my mom in years plural. And remember, my mom was the primary breadwinner in the household. So we had to, one, live off savings, and two, cut back on what we were spending significantly. I went from bringing in that 6-figure salary to I got $1,000 a month as an owner draw. And I just had to figure out how to make that work. And we did. So in May of 2017, we have a product. It's in the market, but it's moving very slow. A lot of that has to do with lack of access to funding so that we can actually grow this thing in a way that's scalable. We just did not have that. At that time, Black female founders were raising about $35,000 to a white male's $1 million to get their business off the ground and going. Obviously, that is a huge swing. Luckily, we were able to raise $200,000 from our friends and family. Again, that's a place of privilege because who has friends and family that are just sitting around with $200,000? That was, again, a benefit for working with my mom. My mom's friends were seasoned executives who had disposable income. Therefore, they could invest in our company. So that is another benefit for that generational thing my mom and I have going on that really helped us move this business forward. So May of 2017, we go to a conference in New Orleans. It's called Collision. And our whole purpose for going there was to exhibit the software. Let's go exhibit the software, see if we can find investors, all that sort of stuff. So one thing we had noticed over time is whenever we went to tech conferences, my mom and I, people never had any idea what we were doing there. People would literally walk up to my mom and say, "Hey, sweetheart, can you give me a gin and tonic?" And we would be like, "Oh my God." We'd be like, hi. She's not working. Like she's over here with the tech founders. And so for this particular conference, we decided we're going to make these t-shirts. So we had a neighbor who did like t-shirt letterpress. And we said, "Hey, can you make us these t-shirts that say Black female founder fund me?" And on the front, got seed funding. So that's the t-shirt we walked into this conference with. And boy, oh boy, did it cause a stir. People were coming up to us out of everywhere. They were like, "Oh my gosh, are you trying to make a political statement?" We actually had a group of white males come up to us and say, "How would you feel if we made a t-shirt that said white male founder fund me?" And we were like, "Well, you don't need to. You're already getting funded. That's the point." So 3 amazing things happened out of us taking that move. So one, that was the best marketing tactic, I would say, over the duration of our business. It cost us $12, those shirts from Walmart, and they really paid off in dividends. So one thing I will say about being an entrepreneur is it is extremely important to be authentically yourself and to show that to the world. Because we did that, one, we met a writer from Forbes. She came up to us. She did not tell us what publication she was with, but she was like, "Tell me about what you're doing." And about a week later, we had our first major piece of press. The second thing that happened is we met this organization called Creative Startups based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They ended up inviting us down for a pitch competition. We went to that pitch competition. We won. And then they sent us to Copenhagen, Denmark, where we also won our category overseas, which was extraordinary because we were like, wonderful. We now know that Mixtroz is not just a US problem. This is a problem that we can solve globally because people meet everywhere. So that's wonderful. But the third and most important thing that happened is we crossed paths with this woman named Beth. So Beth crossed our booth. She came up, she asked some questions, and she said, "I like what you're doing. I'm going to follow you on social media." And we just said, okay. So at the end of 2017, when we were running dangerously low on that friends and family funding that we had raised and stretched out over like 2.5 years, we were getting to the point where we were like, this Mixtroz thing, like we see it could work, but the world isn't ready for us to do this yet. We're not going to be able to raise this funding, all of that. So Beth actually reaches out for us as we're coming to terms with that decision. And she says, "Hey, I just became the executive director of a program. It's based in Birmingham. I think that you guys should apply." So number one, I said, "Mom, we're about to move to the UK. False. No. Birmingham, Alabama." So we go ahead and apply to the program. And what we say to one another as co-founders is, this is the last hurrah. If this works, great. If not, it's time to roll it up. So we end up getting in the program. As soon as we got accepted into the program in January of 2018, that program invested $50,000 in our startup. And that was the shock to the heart that our startup needed to get going. So we go through this accelerator program, which is now like an executive MBA for a business. Like Like literally it was being in class for hours every day, then working on the business, then going out to events at night. My mom and I, we hustled through this whole program. This was another area where we had to get uncomfortable. A story that's around in the startup ecosystem down here is when we first moved to Birmingham, we got a 1-bedroom apartment, my mom and I, to complete this 14-week program. And we shared a full-size bed, y'all, for 14 weeks, my mom and I. And so it was being together all day in the classes and then coming back to our apartment and like really snuggling up together. But that's the thing about embracing discomfort. With what we've experienced this year, that discomfort doesn't last forever. It is a moment in time. And if you really want what's on the other side of that, you have to go ahead and push through. So we did. We completed that program from January till January to April of 2018. As soon as we got out of that program, we did our demo day. On that video that was shown just before I started speaking, that was a clip from our demo day. So after our demo day, we then found out that this thing called Rise of the Rest was coming through Birmingham. We had no idea what that was. What that is a pitch competition that's hosted by Steve Case, the founder of AOL. They randomly picked Birmingham that year, and we happened to be able to qualify because we were completing the accelerator program. So we applied, we made it to the top 8, and then we ended up winning that pitch competition, which means the founder of AOL invested $100,000 in our business. And so following that, we went on to open up a pre-seed round of funding, which was $1 million. So now the journey was, okay, there are about 30 Black females in the United States who have raised over $1 million. Let's get on this journey and go. What's so interesting about it is the data does not lie. It says that to get funded as an entrepreneur, it usually takes white males about 2 to 3 months. If you're a white female, tag on another 1 to 2 months. If you're a person of color, tag on another 2, 3, 4, 5 months. It took us 6 months to the day to raise another $900,000 in change. The rest of that funding came from Birmingham. So that's when we made the decision to move our headquarters from Nashville to Birmingham. Another thing that I will say that I wish would pass to your students is go to the place, and I mean this, if they're in the school, this could be with their circle of friends. Surround yourself with the people who get you, feel you, and champion you. Do not stay in a place that, again, tells you you're crazy and it cannot be done. That is the quickest way to squash all creativity and passion you have for the things that you want to do in your life. So after we raised the $1 million pre-seed round, we now enter into 2019. So what's interesting about this, and I swear after this journey is over, I'm going to write a book on what funding gaps do to entrepreneurs of color. What it does is keep us continually behind the race. I feel like even today, I have started to run a 100-meter dash and I have a 10-minute delay. We know a 100-meter dash ain't that long, but I feel like I constantly am running it on a 10-minute delay because we were in this business so long before we got that piece of significant funding where we could actually grow this business. And so because of that, I'm constantly playing a game of catch up. So whereas that $1 million should have been growth capital, for us, it was really foundational because we had to go back and put processes in place to all the things that we had done leading up to 2018. Before 2019, the business that we built was just built on the sheer hustle of Carrie and Ashlee. That's not scalable at all. So we had to go back and put processes in place so that we could actually scale the business correctly. So now we get there, we're at a place where we have process, and then 2020 happens. So let's go back to that, talk about resilience. Resilience is understanding that life prepares you for what is prepared for you. Let's go into it one more time. If I had an organ, y'all, I would play it. Resilience is understanding that life prepares you for what is prepared for you. If my mom and I had not endured during those early years when it was hard, and let me tell you, nobody was saying a word about Mixtroz. No one cared that we had started a business. Our friends, like besides our wonderful friends and family that invested, no one cared. They were like, what are Ashlee and Carrie doing? It looks so glamorous now. We were like in CNN the other day. That's awesome. But let me tell you, for the first several years of this business, no one cared what was going on in Mixtroz. We had to endure that. We had to care the most about it. And that prepared us for what was prepared for us. And what was prepared for us is this. In 2020, obviously, you know, I just told you guys, my whole business was dedicated to the live event space. Well, that market was decimated. created in March of this year. But you know what was great? We already knew how to work with no money. We had done that the first several years of our business. So all we did was pull the reins in and we stopped spending extravagantly, right? Even though we really weren't. The other thing that we did is we knew that we were going to need a virtual feature with our product. So that feature was slated to release in October of this year. So we flip-flopped our product roadmap and we actually released our virtual feature in May of this year. Because of that, getting it to market so fast and being able to make those quick pivots and bobs and weaves, although we had a dip in revenue in Q2, between Q2 and Q3 of this year, we grew revenue 300%. And then we realized we needed to open up a bridge round of funding because whereas that first round of capital was for foundation, now it's actually time to grow. And we opened that round of funding about a month and change ago, and we are now almost 80% secured. We will close that round before the end of this year. So that's 2 months to funding, which is on par with our white male counterparts. That's how 2020 went for us this year. So what I want to wrap this up with before we get into questions and all of that, and I'm going to read y'all this entire quote. I'm like, take a picture of this, share it with your students because this resonates with me so very hard. The resounding message in this presentation is stay the course. You have to go through the ups, downs, the all arounds to get to the good part of whatever your journey is going to be. It is rare that you just wake up one day and success is on the other side. Success takes work. It takes time. And you have to remember that while you're going through the process of it taking time, people aren't going to be paying attention to you. There's not going to be a whole bunch of Instagram likes on the day when you're just ready to rip your hair out. You know, that stuff will come later when you endure through the process, because while you're enduring, you're learning. So what I want to close this off with is a quote from the late and great Chadwick Boseman. Again, y'all, I thought 2020 could not get any worse after that happened. But here's what he said. This is a snippet from his commencement speech at Howard University. He said, "I don't know what your future is, but if you are willing to take the harder way, the more complicated one, the one with more failures at first than successes, the one that's ultimately proven to have more victory, more glory, then you will not regret it. This is your time." And I truly believe that for all of the colorful people in the world, for all you educators who got up this morning to hear this message, this is the time. We are going to change what entrepreneurship looks like on the Midwest, the Southeast, and beyond because of the work that we are doing today. And then I swear, the last little nugget I'll leave you with before I hand it back over so we can get to some of your questions is, one of the best things that you can do for your students is letting them see entrepreneurs that look like themselves. It is rare if you have a young student, and I'm going to say a young student of color, that they're going to come across an entrepreneur that looks like themselves. This is an area where I'm very intentional. I'm involved in junior achievement down here. I also often go to high schools and things and talk to the students. When I go, I have my hair in dreads. I try to wear Nikes. I go and I look like them, because when they see me do that, they can see themselves do that. And that is probably the easiest nugget to get your students to really understand where their potential starts. Understand that I didn't even really know how to spell the word entrepreneur. It's difficult. I didn't know how to spell the word entrepreneur until sometime in my late 20s. And these students are getting this now at the beginning of their lives. And so they have so much breadth and depth that they get to go into. So again, thank you, YEI, for having me here. It has been a pleasure, and I cannot wait to answer all of your questions. Thank you.
Ashlee, wow. I have goosebumps. I have goosebumps. We're collectively, I think on behalf of everyone here, just, feeling the energy, the resilience, the enthusiasm, and your commitment.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say, it was really a pleasure. And one more time, I was really looking forward to coming to Cleveland, y'all.
We have fun. We have fun. All right, folks here who are in the gallery with me, what can we ask Ashlee, thinking about our students here?
I'm like, ask all the questions, y'all. I'm ready.
I'll start.
Okay.
What would you recommend for kids in high school now? For kids in high school and kids who are younger, what's your advice to them? How do they stay, how do they get ready? What should they be doing now?
Yeah, I think it's the work that happens outside of the classroom. Like, I think it's their willingness to be curious, like to be curious about something. Like, it's like, right, what's of the moment right now for high school students? TikTok, like that's of the moment. I challenge them not only to use the platform, but to understand why the platform is the way it is. I find that the students that have that curiosity to go seek that kind of information out, to like understand the why behind it, to do that sort of thing, like that is something that will get their creative juices flowing. I also generally say to students, in the world that they're living in that's so digitally connected, it is essential that they take an active part in being aware of what's going on in the world. I think all of us on this call, like, we had less of an opportunity to do that just because communication wasn't where it is today. And I think because they have the opportunity to be able to be so connected, be that via, watching the news or, looking online at things. But like, one of the easiest ways I say to do it is like listening to podcasts. I cannot give enough shout outs to podcasts. Podcasts are amazing because you can go seek out content that is interesting to you, but you can learn while you're doing something else. I am always listening to a podcast while I'm working, and I'm really intentional with what those podcasts are. Like, I'm listening to, like, for example, a podcast called The Daily. I literally listen to it every day. It is an NPR podcast, and it just talks to me about world perspectives, maybe in a way that I wasn't thinking about, so I can be educated and well-rounded on the topic so that I can have a good conversation with someone about it. I'm one of those people, like, I will have a conversation with anyone, and I, again, challenge students to be able to do that, because even if you disagree with someone who has a differing opinion from you, if you're well educated on the topic and able to state your case, you might disagree, but you can do so without getting, let's say, nasty with one another. So, I really think it is, students today have to be charged with seeking out knowledge, not just the fun parts, not just playing Fortnite. They need to understand, why did Fortnite become such a big thing? Why was there virality there? So the students who are doing that, that's a really good key indicator that they're probably going to be onto something.
Okay, I see one here. What can we as educators be doing to help our students prepare to have the right skills and background?
Yeah, I think it's exposure. I think one of the big things that I just touched on is, there's a lot happening with specifically founders of color right now, because we're having a moment, and I tell every founder of color that I come across, I'm like, capitalize on this moment, because for so long being a founder of color was such a negative ding. It was like, oh goodness, like no. And so because we're having this moment where people are like intentionally saying yes, I was like, lean into those opportunities. Don't feel some type of way about doing that. So because so many founders of color are getting the spotlight today, you just have more choice in what you're exposing your students to. So for example, this 100 for 100 program that I'm in for American Express, like if you Google that, there are literally 100 Black female entrepreneurs from all different industries, not just tech. Some of them sell products, some of them are doing educational things, all these different things. And like, that would be a great place for people to start, just to understand, what are founders of color doing? And here is like an actual example of someone who is doing the work today. Letting them see what that looks like so that they can make that connection in their mind themselves is great, because when I was growing up, the only entrepreneurs I ever saw were like Bill Gates, and I was like, okay, well, kind of far removed from that. We have to get away from this reality that there isn't like a Black middle class. Like, for some reason, and I'm saying Black arbitrarily, there isn't like a person of color middle class. It's like, if you're a person of color, either you're from the projects or you're Beyonce and Jay-Z. There's no middle class for the fact that you got an education, you went and got a job, and then you may have went and started a business. And so we have to fix that narrative. The only way that you can fix that narrative is to expose them to people who have that narrative. And D, thank you for those. I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
So talk again about what sustained you in the darkest moments. You talked about having a lot of resilience, but was it your mom? Was it the fact that there were two of you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it lets me touch on something that I love to touch on when I'm on calls like this. So, two things. So, one, I would say having a co founder. Like, for solo entrepreneurs, I don't know how they do it because it's so different. Like, let's say you have a spouse or a partner, right? Like, you can tell them about what's going on in your business, but they're not living the day to day with you. They don't understand that angst that you feel when like the tech breaks or a customer is not happy or, something that you applied for doesn't come through and like all that kind of thing. So like having a co-founder that's like in the trenches with you, I think is so important because you guys are just sharing in all those experiences together. I think the beautiful thing about my mom and I is we had a rock solid foundation before this business started and still do today, arguably even greater because of all the things that we've done together. My mom would have really been my first call, good, bad, or otherwise with Mixtroz. And it's kind of amazing that like now she's just generally sitting next to me. So I think that's great. But then the other side of that is, y'all, when I moved from New York to Nashville, I went through a bout of what we're going to call entrepreneurial depression. I know that I went through depression because it presented itself in sleeping. Like I could sleep for 8 hours and then by like 2 p.m. the next day, I would be ready to sleep some more, like for several more hours. And after a while, I was like, that's not normal. And the reason why is because I was comparing myself to my friends from New York. The summer of 2016, I promise you, every friend that I have went to Greece and I was so angry. I was so angry. And then that really taught me that comparison is the thief of joy. That's one thing that I say all the time. Comparison is the thief of joy because, again, on social media, all we're getting is a highlight reel. We don't know what happened behind all those things. And so I think that's an excellent reminder for students. But the second part of that is I had to go seek help. So I went to the doctor, talked to the doctor about the issue that I was having and got diagnosed. Yes, you are going through depression. So you have to work that out, which I did. And the other thing that I do to this day, as does my mother, we don't play about having our therapy. So like we each have therapy and it's an amazing thing because it's 45 minutes in a safe space with someone who is neutral to me. And I'm able to just share all the thoughts that are going to my head that have to do with Mixtroz, my personal life, my family, or otherwise. And so I think that that's so important. Entrepreneurs are like 6 times more likely to have mental health issues than anyone else, than the general population. And so I think ignoring that or not embracing that is silly. I'm a big fan of, I'm like, if you work out, why would you not work out your brain? It's crazy. Like, so yes, that.
So I think that's worth repeating, the focus on health and the focus on taking care of yourself in addition to trying to solve the problems of the world. So thanks for that reminder. That is really great. Mistakes you wish you could have avoided?
I look at it now like a learning experience. I think that those mistakes, whatever they were, and trust me, y'all, mistakes happen all the time. I look at those mistakes like they are things they are things that had to happen. Like they are things that had to happen so that we wouldn't make the mistake again. Like a great example of this is at the very beginning. So something funny happens when you become an entrepreneur. People come out the woodwork sometimes and they're like, hey, if you give me like 10% of your business, I can do this amazing thing for you. And that is very tempting as an entrepreneur to like buy into that or believe that. And so we did have someone at some point like on our cap table who like did nothing. And that taught us a very intense lesson. To get him off the cap table was a process. But it just taught us, it's like, don't believe in smoke and mirrors. Like if somebody is saying that they can do a service for you, have every single thing about what that service is to be written down in a legal document with the KPIs clearly identified. So if they don't deliver on those, you can say, well, that is null and void. No, thank you. Keep it moving. So, I think it's just learning business lessons like that. Like if it sounds too good to be true, it very likely is. So, I think it's the reminder of, even for your students, not to let somebody sell them a dream. You know what I mean? Because like it's rare that like one person is going to come in and like really change your business. That's your job as the entrepreneur to be doing that. So if somebody is trying to sell you that, it's likely it's likely not real. And so, I think it's that, but I do think all the mistakes or missteps, they set you up just not to make those later, to not continue making, those same mistakes and whatnot. And some of them are just very needed because you honestly need the lesson. Wait, here, I have a good one for you really quick to piggyback off that. Here's a good story. I had what we call a millennial meltdown in, I think it was 2016, because it was recently after I had moved from New York to Nashville. So my mom and I went to a pitch competition. So go to a pitch competition. We were super excited to do this. One thing I'll say about pitch competitions, and this goes from everything from Lemonade Day to a pitch competition with the founder of AOL. Pitch competitions, all they are marketing. They are nothing else other than marketing. They shouldn't even call them pitch competitions, because the competition part is less important. What's most important is you're in front of an audience and people are hearing about your idea. And if they like it, they'll take it somewhere else or make a connection for you. These days, whenever I have to pitch at something, I never go in expecting anything. And guess what? If we happen to win, awesome. If we don't win, also good. And the reason for that is this: we did this pitch competition and we were like, man, we just killed that. We looking at the people at the audience and they were like, oh, you guys totally got it. And so I remember I put on lip gloss, like, oh, let me be ready to get up and get this award, like when it's time. And then of course, when they read off the award, it was not our name. And so I had like a meltdown. So like I had to like excuse myself and go to the restroom. My mom would tell you if she was here, she was like, she held down the fort. And so what did she do? She continued to work that room. There was a gentleman that came up to her after the pitch competition. The pitch competition, I think, was like $2,500. This guy comes up to her afterwards and says, he was like, I think the judges were wrong. He was like, I didn't like that. He was like, email me next week. I'm going to invest. He invested 4 times the amount of the competition winnings the following week. And since then, he has been one of our most like involved, engaged investors. And this is someone we met like out of nowhere. So again, it's that serendipity, and then also understanding that like everything will happen the way it's supposed to. But like pitch competitions, I'm like, I don't buy into that. I'm like, you win them, you lose them, who cares?
We're going to leave it at that. I don't think there's any way to top it. Show them by doing it, right?
Show them by doing it. Like, y'all, that's it. That's it.
Ashlee, it has been our pleasure. Let's give a virtual hand again, please, for her, and a real
thank y'all.
We have loved being here with you today. We look forward to the next time. I think
yes.
That's what I'm going to say. Thank you again. It's been everything that we hoped for.
Oh, thank you so much, everybody. And again, I did put my contact information in the chat, but y'all, I'm not hard to find. Ashlee at Mixtroz.com. Ashlee is spelled with 2 E's. If you have a question or anything, feel free to reach out to me. It would be my pleasure. Thank you. And let me say this, like, I know y'all have heard this a bunch over the course of this time, but y'all, the educators, y'all are the real MVPs. Thank you so much for the work that y'all are doing day to day. My best friend is a K through 12 educator, and I get it. So thank you for the work that y'all are doing. And thank you again to YEI. I'm looking forward to this session on networking a little bit later.